Hey, what's up, guys? Today we're going to take a look at a few things to check out in your takeaway to make sure that you are set up to be the most consistent ball striker that you can possibly be. Let's get into it. The one thing that I'm definitely going to encourage people to do here, you can kind of see I got a couple of alignment rods laid down. I'm going to talk about how to set them up. And if you do have room, I would suggest potentially grabbing a club and kind of following along with what we're talking about. If you don't have enough room because like ceiling height and stuff to like swing an actual golf club, you could also kind of choke down halfway in your, midway through the shaft of the club, and start doing some of the swings and some of the motion that we're talking about. So that way you could potentially kind of work through this because we're not going to make full backswings today. We're really going to talk from positions 1, 2, and 3. So address to like left arm parallel in the takeaway. We're not going to get all the way up into the top or P4 today, as we would call it. But yeah, we're going to take a look at some things to check out from address to left arm parallel or P1 to P3. Okay. But yeah, I highly suggest if you can grab a couple alignment rods. You need 2 alignment rods. Maybe something to throw down on the ground to represent your golf ball. A quarter would work pretty good. And then you would just need a golf club. So, all right. So let's get into what we're going to look for today. So just getting into address, talk about how to set up our sticks here. So one, I've got the stick, this white stick here off my toe line. It is just pointing straight out towards what would be my target, but it's not in this case being used for alignment. This is going to be used to check on a couple things in our takeaway here in just a second. This yellow line or yellow rod that I have off my trail foot right here, this is set up right off, for me as a right-handed golfer, it's off my right foot. It's off my left, or my right little toe. And it's about a 30-degree angle off of the white line here. So you don't have to get a protractor out and measure it, but roughly 30 degrees. Okay. So, and again, that's going to be used here in just a second as we start talking about some key points to look for in our takeaway. So, but that's how you would kind of set it up. Point the one line down the target and the other line off our trail foot at roughly 30 degrees. Okay. From there, we're going to go ahead and get set up. Golf ball is going to kind of move around a little bit on me here as I'm kind of getting my spot. But once I get set up here and go from P1, let's just kind of go from P1 to P2 and kind of talk about some things that I see that you don't want to do and then some things that you definitely want to do. So the bad things that I see a lot of players do from here is one, they either start moving their arms away from their body. So you can kind of see how the club starts to travel out. That usually leads to the player to start trying to roll the club back in. And from there, those are usually going to be my players that tend to slice the golf ball a good bit because they're starting to like lift their arms out and away and then they roll it back. And you can see what's going to happen. My club face gets really open right here. So again, as I start to kind of roll this back and I start going, that's going to then set me up. You can see where the club is. It's way behind me. So from that point, I've got to create momentum, and that's going to bring me to come over the top and then start coming across the golf ball. And now I'm starting to slice it. So definitely one of the biggest things that I run into as a coach is you see players just starting to lift the club and roll it. So I spend a good chunk of my time starting to fix that. The other kind of more, I won't say it's not as common, but you definitely do see it from time to time. Somebody will just rip the club inside super fast. Mainly, I think that happens a lot because they're told that they need to swing the club inside to out. And so I can tell you right now, if somebody said that to me, my first instinct would be, oh, I need to swing the club inside so I could swing going out. And in theory, when we rip it inside like that really fast, kind of similar to the player that lifts and rolls, the player that rips it inside, again, the club gets so far behind me early, I got to start to lift the club up. And now I'm setting myself to come over the top again and start cutting across the ball and slicing it off the planet. Those would also potentially be the players that hit the ball really low. But yeah, those are kind of the 2 main common things that you get really early on in someone's takeaway. So good things that we want to be doing, the stuff that we want to be practicing, why we have these sticks set up, right? So in the takeaway from P1 to P2, a couple things that we're going to look for. One, I want the shaft of the club to be parallel to the white line that I have. Now, it doesn't have to be right over the top of it. Might be a little inside of it. Might be a little out in front of it. But we want it to be a parallel line to that white stick down on the ground. The other thing that we're going to look for here when I look back in my camera, I want to make sure that the club head is in line with the player's hands. It could be a little bit in front of them, could be a little bit behind them, could be a little bit above it, could be a little bit below it, but somewhere in this region would be very acceptable. Don't want it way out here, don't want it way over here, definitely don't want it way back here early on. Okay, so from P1 to P2, big thing that we're going to look for is getting that shaft parallel to our target line and the club head is in line with my hands. Now, in terms of face angle, to me, this is one of the biggest things as we get to this point that somebody's going to mess up, because they can get to this point where the club head gets in line, but now all of a sudden you'll see like the toe of my club is very straight up and down. That would actually be starting to open the club face, and that would be very bad. At this point in the golf swing, we want that club face to be matching the player's spine angle or in the similar angle. So that's straight up and down. Well, if I keep rolling it in that position, now it's facing the opposite way as my spine, or the club face is facing the sky. It's a very open face. Going in the other direction, if I close it there, there'd be square, so now it matches my spine angle. And I can go past that and overly close it. Okay, so when we start going from P1 to P2, we want that club head somewhere in line with our hands with the angle of the face matching the player's spine. Okay, and again, that's probably one of the, I would rank that in top 3 things that I watch people mess up right out the gate. And to be totally real with you, I think that's why most people have the swing faults that they have, is they've done something out of order right away, and then from there they're just playing catch up. So in my opinion, going from 1 to 2, and then even when we get here in a second, going from 2 to 3, I think this is, in my opinion, the most important parts of the golf swing. Yeah, coming down in transition is important. Hitting the golf ball is obviously, all right, that's the most important part. But in order for me to set myself up to be successful to hit the golf ball more consistently, these positions tend to be, in my opinion, what I see to be the most crucial. So as we start going in here, let's get back to P2. So let's get that club back to parallel, club head in line with my hands, face in line with my spine, or matching my spine angle, excuse me. All right. Now, once we go from 2 to 3, this is where I find, like I said, most people really screw up, is as we start to go up here, we want this left arm to trace that yellow stick on the ground, or it's going to work deeper into our backswing. So at this point, this is where a lot of the rotation in the backswing is going to start to happen. There's a little bit that's taken place now, but the majority of my backswing rotation is about to take place from 2 to 3. So when I start getting that left arm to trace that yellow line, all right, now when I get my left arm parallel to the ground, I'm going to stop right here. I want this left arm to be pretty close to matching, or kind of in the same angle as that yellow stick on the ground. If it's out here in front of my toes, you can see how the shaft gets pulled out in front of me. If it's too deep at that point, you can see my hands would actually get stuck and this elbow gets behind me early. Now, I will tell you, the players at 3 who tend to be here are going to be your big drawers and hookers of the golf ball. Okay. The players that are here at 3 are going to be your slicers and faders of the golf ball, just because of the path at this point is going to start working very up, and then I'm going to be very, very steep coming down, where my player that's back here at 3 is going to keep wrapping around, and then it's going to be kind of shallower at that point. So they're going to swing it more inside to out. So depending on what kind of ball flight you want, you can start to kind of, maneuver that. But at 3 there, when that left arm's parallel, all right, the other thing that we're going to kind of check here is we want to have the hands and the grip of the club kind of in line with my trail bicep. So again, for me as the right-handed player, this is my right bicep. And then from there, the angle of the shaft is pointing more or less down at where the golf ball is. It's not inside of the golf ball, and it's not outside of the golf ball. I try and have the angle of that club pointing back at the golf ball. So when we talk about being on plane and things of that nature, that's kind of what we're looking for. But that also starts to make sure that the player's hands and wrists are kind of doing what they need to do. And there's other videos on the channel here that kind of talk about like grip matchups and how that works, but we'll dive into that another day. But those would be kind of some of the checkpoints that you want to start to look for. So going from 1 to 2, shaft parallel to the target line, club face in line with my hands, and the angle of the face is matching my spine angle. From 2 to 3, I'm going to trace that yellow line with my left arm. In my case, left arm. In other cases, it could be your right arm if you're a left-handed player. But for me, my left arm. And then from here, the things that I'm looking for, right? Hands are in line with my trail bicep, and the angle of the club shaft is more towards the golf ball. Some things that you may also want to note here: if my knuckles of my glove hand tend to be more turned away from me at this point, that's a great thing for most players. That tends to be the club face fairly square. That usually means my wrist here is fairly flat. If I start to twist my knuckles at myself, or the logo of the glove looking back at me, that's going to tend to open the player's face. This is wrist extension. That's really good for bunker shots. Not so great for hitting your 7-iron or 8-iron from the middle of the fairway. So you definitely want to feel like the knuckles are turned a little bit away from you. And you definitely want to have that left or lead wrist much flatter at that point. Okay. But that would kind of be one of the last little checkpoints that you want to kind of look for there. And I'd start correcting club face as I'm getting more comfortable with how I'm moving my left arm across and getting deeper. And then I can start learning how that feels like the hand's kind of turning away from me or flexing away. Okay. But in terms of how to go from 1 to 3 today, that's kind of what we're looking at. Get the club parallel, get the club face match and spine angle at 2. And then from there, trace your stick back, get the knuckles facing away, angle of the shaft kind of towards the ball. All right. If you have any questions, drop them down below in the comments. Feel free to ask them at class when I see you guys. Other than that, see you in the next video.